Saudi Cup and welcome to another episode for Thailand Tuesday. It's Tuesday, I'm in Thailand, you know what that means. And finally, eventually, it's not a podcast about COVID or not a podcast where I will go into great detail about any COVID things because nothing much changed since the last podcast, since last week. I mean, your regular update right now, we have some clusters spreading again in Pattaya, for example, a city not far away from Bangkok. Other cities seeing like restrictions being loosened up again. Bangkok is still in the red district, or red area, but still a few things are about to open up again, according to certain newspapers, but then we don't see it in action. For example, gyms and swimming pools and so on are supposed to open up again, according to an English-speaking newspaper here or an English-speaking magazine. But then again, we haven't seen it in practice yet. So let's just wait with it and let's maybe talk about this again next week, I assume. For now, as you might have also seen from my website, mythai.org, I published a few travel-related posts because I went on a quick weekend getaway and figured, hey, travel is a nice thing to actually talk about on the podcast. And I'm not going to review or recap my latest travel experience because you can just go to my website and read the review articles there. I'm not going to read them here, but I thought talking about travel might be something interesting. And while these days I'm not traveling much, like in terms of backpacking like I used to, or like adventure travel, because now I'm not sure if it's actually in the camera for the audio listeners. I'm pointing at one of my cats in the background. So very often when I travel right now, I take them with me because I don't want to just leave them at home forever without any interaction. I don't want to send them to like some strange cat hotels with like strangers. Don't trust your pets with strangers, or don't trust strangers with your pets. Depends who you're more worried about. So I did a lot of cat traveling these past few weeks and months, but I've been here for a while. So way back when I came to Thailand, I did lots of backpacking and lots of adventurous travel, which was kind of cool, kind of crazy at times, but also kind of cool. And I thought maybe I just give you a few insights, like how you could actually plan some trips in Thailand. So we don't always need to go to resorts and book all-inclusive and so on. Thailand is awesome for adventure travel, for spontaneous travel, for backpacking. So back then when I started traveling around Thailand, I did lots of backpacking. So it's rather easy to do this. So of course you have always the option to fly to your destination. Compared to the West, where I'm familiar with, but maybe also to, if you're not from the West, where you're from, flights here are rather cheap. So it's not cheap, but it's affordable compared to flights back home, for example. So flying to your destination is probably always an option, especially if you're on holidays here. If you're from another country, I assume you earn more than the average Thai person. So flying usually is an option. However, when you live here and you make money here, like I did, especially before when I was a volunteer, you don't earn much. So you say, okay, I might not want to spend, 2, 3, 4, 5,000 baht for a flight. Maybe I just spend 4, 5, 6, 7, 800 baht for a bus trip. So then you can take buses. You can take long haul buses. They go all across the country. And what I usually did is, because I was a cheap traveler, and that's because that's what I was used to when I did like backpacking in Australia and whatnot. I usually booked overnight buses. So those overnight buses usually leave around, unfortunately, like 10 p.m. maybe, usually, mostly not later, which means very often you will arrive at like 4, 5, 6 in the morning. So it's like, why don't you leave at midnight? So I arrive at 8 or something, but very often they leave at 10 at the latest, and then you arrive like super early in the morning, which might mess up the sleep a little bit, but I mean, still, you don't have to pay for a hotel overnight. So hey, save the night. Save the night, Eagle Eye Cherry, look it up. Safe tonight. Anyway, so I did lots of bus travel. I'm good with sleeping in moving vehicles, so I just sit in the bus, put my backpack somewhere, and then just sleep. So no problem for me. So I traveled from Udon Thani to Bangkok, for example, and I stayed in Isan. It's like an 8-hour bus trip, so perfect to get some sleep until the bus arrives. Every time the bus arrives in the morning, no matter where you go, they start playing some music to wake everybody up, and it's usually like some Isan, some Morlam music or some pop Morlam or something, and this is like, yeah, not the greatest, but I mean it wakes you up at least. Okay, so buses are a great option. And when you book buses, there are also several levels of buses. There's like the governmental associated bus, just the cheapest one, but also the least comfortable one. There are non-aircon buses. Don't take them. I had to take them once during Songkran. Oh my god, the 8-hour trip took like 14 hours. The bus was all effed up, no aircon. The windows didn't close. Like some windows were open, some were closed. It rained in between. You couldn't close the window. Oh my god, horrible. Great to talk about. Horrible while you're in it, and super small. And you're like all sitting like this. For all your listeners, I'm mimicking right now how you sit in a very very confined space. So crazy and not great experience while you're at it. It's funny to talk about now 10 years later. And other buses, I have like aircon buses, and then again other buses aircon and like more space, like less people in that, but therefore they're more expensive. So you can find different layers there. It's easy. You can even most buses you can book online, even via Thai Ticket Major. Even though it's a terrible website from usability point of view, but ThaiTicketMajor.com lets you book bus tickets online. But I think by now if you Google book bus tickets online, you will find even more options than back then when I was still doing this on a regular. So I took buses from Udon Thani to Bangkok. The other way around, I took buses to Chiang Mai from Bangkok, from Udon Thani to Chiang Mai to Sukhothai. I took buses also to the south, to and from Koh Samui even, to Krabi, to Koh Tao. So I took buses basically everywhere in Thailand, everywhere you would want to go. So buses work very well. Again, usually I try to take overnight buses if it's a long trip, like 6, 7, 8, 9 hours up. Save the night, just sleep there. What you should be aware of is they have stops in between. And then when they have those longer stops, like 20, 30 minutes, they might all go out and then like on a gas station or whatever, or like those famous, there's like some more famous stops on the highway where there's like famous souvenir shops or restaurants or something. Just be aware that you check the time and that you're back on time, because they won't wait too long for you. Yeah, they count, but if you're missing after 10 minutes or whatever, they still go. So be aware of this. And they might not all speak English there, so yeah, just pay double attention if you're doing this. But I never got lost. I never lost anything on there. Always very easy, so don't worry too much about it. I think it's a great experience. It's some adventurous experience. Go for it. Alternatively, what you could also do is always take a minivan. So there, to most destinations, there are also minivans going. Minivans, those mini buses, they're of course way faster than like a big bus. There's like less people in there, but I hate them because, they're also very confined space. So if you're not lucky and don't get the seat right next to where the door closes, then you have to like keep your legs close to you. And I have knee issues since my knee injury that I talked about in the last podcast. So that really hurts. So I hate those. So as soon as it's like more than 2 hours in a minivan, I hate it. So I'd rather take the long bus, the big bus, spend more time, but be more relaxed when I go somewhere. So even if I go to uni, to campus by public transport, I don't take the van, which would take maybe 30 minutes, 45. I'd rather take the big bus, the normal bus, which takes an hour 10. But at least I can have my legs straight and don't need to squeeze into that van. But if there's not an issue for you, take the van. Vans are much faster, but they're also very often, not often, but they're frequently in the news for accidents. So vans. For the audio listener, I'm fighting with my cat right now because my cat tries to throw down the mic stand. Spooky, don't throw down the mic stand. Okay, so don't bite the mixer. Now my cat is biting the mixer. That's great podcasting right here. So those vans there are often news pieces about those vans being in accidents. So just because the drivers are too exhausted, they have to work a lot, they drive very fast so that they have a longer break at the destination and whatnot. Same goes for bus drivers though, of course, right? So just be aware of this, but maybe don't use the cheapest possible one, maybe use one that has lots of trusted reviews and so on, but then vans are also an option. So back then when I went to Koh Lan, for example, an island close to Bangkok, I would take the van. It's like 2.5 hours ride or so. I went to Koh Chang once. I also took the van to Koh Chang, which is then also I think 3 hours to Rayong, and then you just take the ferry anyways. So that's usually when I took the vans as well. So That's always an option. Another option could be trains, and I'm hesitating a little bit because it depends of the class where I go. So it's like first, second, third class. I once took a second class train to Chiang Mai from Bangkok, which is also, I guess, like 8 hours or so. It was okay. It's definitely slower than a bus. Maybe not as crowded in the second class, not sure. Third class usually always super crowded. There are parts that are even for free in the third class, so then it's super, super, super crowded. During COVID, maybe even problematic. But yeah, so second class was fine. They have a new train to Chiang Mai actually, because it's like the famous train destination, which then I know has like restored trains. They look quite nice. I don't know how comfy they are. Never tried them, but yeah, I did also take the third class train once because, well, backpacking and adventure, and I took it to the south to Surat Thani. And yeah, so the seat wasn't working well. You were like moving back and forth on your seat. You couldn't adjust it. The windows were broken. It stops every few minutes. There's always hawkers coming in selling fried chicken and sticky rice, which sounds good, but it smells everywhere. I had other guests, other passengers bringing like their live chicken in there into the train and stuff like this. And it was like a 12-hour ride or something because it was so slow. Insanity. Fun for backpacking, from an adventure point of view, but it was definitely not comfortable. I was tired AF when we arrived, and we had like a stop in between. I forgot where it was, and then we had to wait there for 2 hours or so because the Oriental Express wanted to pass through and was late. But they announced that it's going to come soon, so our train had to wait to let the Oriental Express pass because this one would be faster than ours. And so after the Oriental Express passed, then our train could start again. And like I said, those train tracks are usually not made for like super fast, or the trains aren't made for super fast travel. So those state trains are not the most fun or exciting ones, I believe, to travel. Exciting, not the most fun ones. It's nice, again, to talk about it when I meet friends and like, hey, did you take the train? Yeah, I took the train once, third class, Surat Thani. Let me tell you. But it was not relaxing. It was very exhausting when we arrived. I was super tired. But cheap, and hey, backpacking adventure, that's cool, right? Another thing that you then probably are quite likely to take when you go, or if you go to the south, for example, are ferries. I don't have to talk much about this, but there are privately run ferries usually, or like ferries that are speedboats. That's it. I was missing the word. So speedboats, speed ferries, like most famous one that goes to Koh Samui, Koh Tao, Koh Phangan is Lompraya, for example. They're all Lompraya tours. You can book with them. They have an office in Khao San Road, or probably also online, of course. So you can book a ticket with them. They have a bus. They send a bus down to the south, and then they also have speedboats, speed ferries. They're waiting for you. So it's rather fast. If you do like me, backpacking, and you're cheap and you want to save as much money as possible, then of course you take like the cheap bus down south or third class train, and then you look for the local ferry, which is usually the big one where you can put your cars on, but also that's very, 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 very slow. But it's also nice. You go on the ferry, on the water, enjoy the sun, get a sunburn, and take some pictures and so on. So that's also fine. Usually then when you arrive, if you're booked with a whole tour provider, they will take care of you. If not, then there are usually lots of taxis waiting for you, like when you get off the ferry or wherever you arrive. If you arrive in a beach town or in Chiang Mai, you arrive at a bus stop, at the harbor, wherever you arrive, there will be lots of taxis waiting. I recommend not just to jump in the first one that goes like, hey, my friend. Make a plan before where you want to go. If you don't have a plan, just walk around a little. Let everybody the busyness come down a little, and then you will find a few taxis there that wait a little bit longer, that didn't get anyone. And then they usually give you some more honest advice in regards to where to go, not just like the one that pays them the most. Because many of them, of course, they get commission from resorts if they take guests there. So yeah, be aware of this. Maybe Google before, walk around a little bit. In the beginning, when I did lots of backpacking, for example, I went to those islands and usually arrived there, and then I would just say, no, thanks, taxi. I'm just going to walk around, just check on Google, my phone, just see where I can go, walk around a little bit. If the destinations are further, like for example, in Koh Chang, you don't want to just find something right next to the harbor, right to the pier, then Googling makes sense, or maybe just take a taxi, a pickup truck like a Songthaew, just to the tourist center, for example, or just somewhere and then just walk around there. Again, don't always necessarily believe the taxi driver because they will probably bring you where they get commission or where they get the most commission. Otherwise, again, usually no problem to find a place to stay. The first time I traveled in Thailand was Koh Tao. I talked about it before in the podcast. We arrived on the island, we just walked around, for example. Like, hey, Koh Tao isn't that big. Let's just walk around a little bit. Let's see where we can find something. And we just walked up a few hidden trails and found some bungalows by the beach, for example. So that's always something I would recommend if you are adventurous. If not, search before and make sure that you find something or found something, then make sure that you actually go there. That's obviously the safer solution and the solution that saves you more headache and it doesn't require you to walk around in the sun. And then if you don't find anything, you're like, oh, damn, you're getting mad and you're getting tired and exhausted. So these days I always search before, of course. I maybe even book before via Agoda or whatever, and then just go directly to that place. You can always tell a taxi driver where to go and so on. All right, but I think that's self-explanatory. So I think the modes of transportation that are the most exciting ones, I would say buses, also cheap, train, of course, and then when you want to go to islands, maybe ferries or long-tail boats. For example, when you go to Krabi, I wouldn't recommend staying in Krabi itself. I would recommend to then go to one of the more famous beaches, like Rayleigh Beach, for example, or Tonsai Beach, if you are into climbing. And then you would just take long-tail boats from the main beach, from Krabi Beach. And it always pays off to maybe be there a bit early, maybe not squeeze into the last boat, but maybe just chill a little bit there, talk to the locals, talk to the long-tail boat guys. It's like, hey man, where do you recommend to go? Make sure that, again, same with the taxi guys, maybe not necessarily go to a resort where you think, oh, they bring everybody there and that's where they get the most commission. Say like, hey, I give you 20 baht or 100 baht extra, because 20 baht is nothing. I give you 100 baht extra, but can you give me something or tell me something that's more quiet, more relaxed, and they usually know places. So it builds some rapport. If you have some rapport with them, you say, hey, if you give me like a cool space, I'm going to use you later if I need to go somewhere else, and then I'm just going to call you and so on. So that's usually something that's worth exploring. People are really cool, really nice, really open-minded in most places here. So build rapport with them. Don't just use them once and then just like, oh, whatever, I never see you again. Long-tail boats, for example, I always make a point of like, hey, if the guy is nice, I say like, hey, can I call you if you need a long-tail boat? I'm on this island here right now. Can I just give you a call or like a taxi on the island? Can I give you a call when I need to go somewhere? And they usually say like, yeah, sure, you can, no problem. I'll take you anywhere. So that's usually a nice idea, I believe. And you also connect with the locals, get something to know, and they are happy because they can talk to you. So it's a win-win situation. And of course, I mean, they make some money, so it's a win-win situation here. All right. I think that's enough for like just some travel advice this week. I wanted to also throw like this in between, not only COVID talks. And I saw a few requests on social media that asked me more about more health-related topics or questions, like because last time I talked about my time in the hospital and so on, so maybe I have a podcast on this, but as I said, I also have a few friends that work in healthcare here, so maybe I can get them on and then we can have like a health related podcast. All right, that's it for this week. If you have any questions in particular, please do shout out, of course. Maybe next week depends on the COVID situation, a bit more COVID, but then also that's always like one or two questions like every week is like, what's your most exciting trip? What's the most embarrassing thing that happened, and so on. Maybe next week I do the travel edition for this. I tell you my most exciting trips and maybe also the worst trips that I had in Thailand, just so that you can prepare for this. All right. Until then, as always, stay safe, take care, and I hope to see and talk to you soon. Sawadee krap.